Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Church360 Members Updating Offering Envelopes. My name is Peter Frank and I'll be leading our training session today. I'm the Senior Manager of Concordia Technology Solutions and I've been with our group for almost 5 years now, so it's been crazy how quickly that has gone. We've done a lot over those last 5 years, but it still seems to have gone really fast. My contact information is available there. Email is the best way to get a hold of me. My phone number is listed as well, although I'm in and out of my office all day. It seems like most of my days are filled with meetings. So if you leave a message, I'll definitely be getting back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, you can reach out at the 800 number, and that'll get you in touch with our software consultants, and they can also direct you to get any answers that you're looking for. But I always love talking with people in the churches, and so please feel free to reach out to me, and even if it takes a minute, I'll be sure to get back to you. So a few housekeeping items before we begin. First off, today's presentation will be about 25 minutes. Now, I tend to get a little wordy, and as I get excited talking about Church360 members, I often go over that. So if I do, I apologize. The last 5 minutes is generally reserved for question and answers, but if I don't see many questions in the queue, then I don't feel as bad about cutting into that time. So I do ask that if you have questions, you go ahead and put them in there while you're thinking about it. There's a good chance that it may be covered in our materials later on based on the outline, but if not, sometimes I can look over and see what's going on while I'm presenting and answer the question there. But otherwise, I'll make sure to get everything answered during our Q&A time. Now, this recording will be shared. It'll be shared on our YouTube channel and also on our Resource Center. This is the last in our series of 6, I believe, training webinars on Church360 members, and we're keeping a collection. We'll be sending an email out with a link to all 6, just because we've been doing a number of training webinars during this time and people are attending them. We're trying to reduce the amount of email that's going out. So we'll be sending an email out hopefully later today with that information. So quick outline of what we'll be looking at today. We're going to focus on setting envelope numbers. Now that process in and of itself is not too difficult, but it's all the other things that come into play that make it a little bit more complex. So we're going to start off there and show the basic, and then we'll really get into some strategies on how to do it in your church. So one of the things we'll be looking at is smart groups for envelope numbers and how to go about using smart groups in a couple different ways. We'll go through that process of renumbering envelopes. Now, we're at the end of March, which is kind of a weird time to be talking about renumbering envelopes. And most churches will do that in about October, November, sometimes December, even January. So we've already passed that real season in the church for envelopes. But the important thing is to get your strategy right as you're going about it during the year, and that'll make that change at the end of the year that much easier. So we'll go through that process and some of the things that go along with that, which will be focused on in the giver's mode of the people view. So things like sorting by envelope number, when you might need to do that, how you get the data out to Excel, how to print and distribute statements or use mailing labels accordingly, and the last thing on there will be Q&A. So we may jump around on the outline a little bit because this is not just a straight ABC process. Every church is a little bit different, has different needs, and how we go about it will change. So that's enough of the outline. Let's go ahead and get started. Now I'm going to jump over to my screen here, and this is the people view, and I'm going to make sure, what am I zoomed in at? 125 is generally where I go. Hopefully that's able to be seen. So you can do that in your browser if it's too small to see, and the screen will adjust accordingly. You may lose out on some information as you go, but I know during webinars it may be a little bit hard to see what I'm showing, so I always try to zoom in. So we're going to start off generally at the people area, but the bulk of our time, or at least our attention, is really going to focus around entering envelope numbers. And so to get to that view, you go to the Settings tab, and you go to Envelopes under the Collections. Now this view is a very important view, but it's not one you're going to come in on a daily basis, and so it often gets overlooked because it's a one-time-a-year thing. Generally, one time a year in bulk that you're doing this, but as things happen during the year, you may change it, and so you'll go in here. So we really want to become familiar with this view and what's behind it. So up at the top, you see that title of envelopes. Right below that, it says as of, and then you get a date selector. Now, the fun thing, and I say fun in a very tongue-in-cheek kind of way, the fun thing with offering envelopes is that each envelope really has a beginning and an end date where it's assigned to a person. And in some congregations, that beginning date is January 1st and that end date is December 31st of the same year. In some congregations, it's customary to keep the same envelope number with the individuals throughout their life as a member. And that can make things a little bit difficult on the church office, but it makes it easier on the giver, and so that's why it's often done. Sometimes people will lose their envelopes and say that they need to get a new box, and in most cases the church office will have extra, and so their end date may be sometime right after they've lost them, and their start date will be when they get a new box. So it gets a little bit more complicated. It should seem like a straightforward process, but as we know in the church, things are very rarely straightforward. And I say in the church, it's really in life in general. So we're going to start off looking at things as of today, March 30th, 2017. As we get into looking at renumbering, we're going to look ahead at January 1st, 2018. But I want to go through this view a little bit. You'll see, as in many of our views, we have a filter. And so if you want to get to Sean Robinson, he's the one I often go to, you can type in Robinson, you can type in Sean, and it'll take you down there. You also have the option to filter by a smart group or a tag, and we're going to look at that in just a moment, so I'm not going to get into that in too much detail. So let me clear out my filter. The table that you have here below is divided into a number of columns. You've got the name and then spouse. Now, generally, the givers, well, what we call a giving unit is one of two things. It's either an individual or a married couple. Now that's key that they're a married couple. They have to be set in the system as being married, and then they can choose to be a joint contributor or not. In most cases, the vast majority of cases, those who are married will contribute jointly. But it's not 100%, and we know that because in various family situations, sometimes the spouses choose to give separately. Sometimes it's during the year in which they're getting married, so for a time they're contributing individually, then they get married, then they contribute jointly. So you have these different scenarios that come into play. So that's one thing to keep in mind, and we'll look at how to go about doing that from this view, but then also from another view. So contributes jointly is the checkbox there. Then you've got current envelope number and new envelope number, and not everybody who gives will require an envelope number. The last check here is don't renumber. We'll get into that as we look at a bulk renumbering. But now we've got the lay of the land, we'll go back to this idea of joint contributors. So we've, many of the times that our customers have had trouble with offering envelopes has come because the people that are contributing have not been set up properly. And I'll show you what we've done to make that easier. When we go back to the people view, and we're going to use the Abbotts as an example because they're at the top of the alphabet, it makes it real easy. We're going to click on Dave Abbott, and you can see that Dave Abbott and his wife Sue contribute jointly. Now, we've got, let's see, we're going to end up deleting this marriage June 4th, 2001. So I'll be sure to re-enter it that way. So we're going to go ahead and delete this marriage. Now, when you see here, when you're trying to end that relationship, you've got end by divorce, end by deceased. Those are appropriate ways to actually end a marriage data-wise. For this example, we're going to delete it. That's not deleting the person, that's just deleting the marriage. Oh, and I forgot, marriages cannot be deleted because there are offerings associated with it. So never mind on that process. I should have tested that ahead of time. But we'll just walk through it. So when you add somebody as a spouse, let's go, actually I think we've got Jason Freeman. Looks like we've already married Jason Freeman off. He's often my example. There we go. So Jason Freeman is an an adult who is single right now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and add the plus, and often I will marry him off to Rebecca Owens in my scenarios. And so we will put that Rebecca Owens is his spouse, and when you add that relationship, it'll give you some information about what is happening in their contributing history. So Jason Freeman was already contributing with envelope number 119. Rebecca Owens was already contributing with envelope 149. How would you like to contribute? How would you like them to contribute going forward? And you can then choose one of those options. That helps solve some of these issues of, well, we've had these offerings in place and now they're contributing jointly. What are we going to do with it? It gives you these options and lets you choose. But all of these are very potential scenarios, and sometimes you need to talk through it with the members. Sometimes you just need to make that decision for them. So you really get 4 options: continue with Jason's, continue with Rebecca's, contribute jointly but do a brand new envelope and don't assign it right now. You can do that from the envelopes view, or continue to contribute separately. Now, if you are going through this process with 2 people who have never contributed, and if you X out, you get that last one, contribute, or the third one, contribute jointly but without the envelope. Actually, it looks like it kept it under 119. Good, that's a new feature, so I'm still a little unfamiliar with all the defaults. But if you are adding new people into the system that have never given before, you don't get that option because there's no offerings tied to it. And you get this view here where it's saying, okay, by default they contribute jointly. You can have them contribute separately if you want. Now, down here in the lower right, you have envelope number. And in this scenario, we already have one. When you click on this envelope number, it'll jump you to this view, this Enter Envelopes view. And it'll take you right to Jason Freeman and Rebecca Owens. And you can see here, there's where you can add the spouse and contribute jointly. We've also added it here where you can add a spouse. So it looks like I have myself in here twice. There's Peter Frank. If I wanted to add a spouse, my spouse's name is Laura. She is not in here. I can add a spouse that way. So you don't always have to go back to the people view and add a spouse as you're contributing jointly, as you're wanting to add a joint contributor, I should say. So we give you that in a couple different ways. It's the same process either way. And so that can make it a little bit confusing because you could do it one of 2 ways and you're doing the exact same thing. But that's the flexibility we like to give, is to where you're thinking about it, give you that option to finish that task. That's a whole lot of words just to talk about contributing jointly, but it's caused many hiccups in the past, and so it's really important to get that right as we go. So I'm going to scroll up to the top now. And I want to go back to actually talking about smart groups. So smart groups is another thing that you can do in multiple places. But up in the top right here, right now it's showing everyone. And you see we've got, well, like here, Jacob and Lacey Abbott are Dave and Sue's kids. They are not really contributors. So you may want to filter them out of this view because right now you've got everybody in your database here. And as I'm sure you know, at the church, you're not giving everybody an envelope box. That can be rather costly. So let's first create a group that has envelopes, so that have an envelope number at all right now. And we're going to save this and just say, what do we want to name it? Has offering envelope number. Just type that, and we'll save that. So that's a good way to just filter down your list and say anybody who are people who have an envelope number right now. All right, now we could go ahead and say the people who should have an envelope number, and this is really going to change from church to church. I'm actually going to go to everyone and start from scratch. So who should have an envelope number? Well, first off, they should be living. That's pretty much a guarantee that they should be living. Then we can say maybe you don't give envelope numbers until after somebody who has become a member. That's another common one. So people who are members now. Then you may want to say we're only going to give offering envelopes to people who have contributed to any fund in the last, and this is where there's a lot of debate even within churches. You could say within the last 3 years, any amount, any fund. And because if they haven't contributed in 3 years, why are you buying a box of offering envelopes for them? So that's one way of doing it. You may also say that we want people who are confirmed. Like maybe in some churches, that's one of those things that after you receive your confirmation, or you have confirmed your faith, you have pledged to be an active member of the congregation. And one of the things that being an active member requires is to contribute regularly. So maybe you say that they were confirmed ever. So that starts putting your list down, and you can see here that as we do that, we start to see some gaps in here in terms of what's missing. Now, Dave and Sue Abbott fit that criteria. They don't have an envelope number right now. That's really for demonstration purposes. But we're going to go ahead and save group and say eligible for envelopes. And if I could spell that, would make things quicker. So this is my group of people who are eligible for envelopes, and that really reduces my list. Now 111 people. Now I can start going down and clarifying this. Now you see here we will show like deceased spouses on there. They cannot contribute jointly, but it's showing that's the relationship. Now we'll see like Anita and Edgar Gomez. They show up separately here because they are currently contributing individually or contributing separately. If I marked that they are contributing jointly, now that line reduces, they're on that same one. There's their envelope number, and that fits within that system. You see it still highlights Jason and Rebecca Owens because that's where I came through. That's okay. So you can go through this list now and start seeing who should have it. Now at any point in time I can save it and say this is there right now. So renumber 3 envelopes. Those are the different changes I've made with the Freemans and the Gomez's. We're going to go ahead and save that. If I wanted to go in here, I could save their Dave and Sue Abbott's envelope number as of this date. And we'll go ahead and save that. All right, I'm going to refresh just to kind of clear my cache, clear out the Freemans. Actually, it still has that there. The other way to do it is to just go up here to envelopes, and that'll remove any of the things in the URL. So there we go. If we go back here and we look on the 26th of March, you see that Dave and Sue Abbott don't have an envelope number. And if we go and look on the 2nd of April, they do, because we did it on the 30th. So that's something to keep in mind, is that envelope numbers, again, like I said before, have a beginning date and an end date. All right, I think I'm talking too much because we're already at 18 after the hour. So what I'm going to get into next is the concept of renumbering envelopes. And then in this, we've led into this nicely, get into our smart group lists. We're going to go up here and change it, and I can zoom out this way and go to 2018 January 1. So if I want to renumber my envelopes for January 1st, 2018, and you can make that call. Sometimes, you know, as you think about it, you see that, okay, the first Sunday in January is the 7th. So if I'm entering envelopes from the 31st during this week, they're still going to have the 2017 envelope number. So really, maybe I want to start my 2018 as of January 5th. That's something to keep in mind as well, because that'll come up that, well, I want to go ahead and enter my offerings on this date, but as of now, then they're entered in. Just something to keep in mind. We're going to do it as of January 5th, that Friday. That way any weekend services, Saturday or Sunday or even Monday, all flow into the new year. Okay, so we've got that. We've set our smart group eligible for envelopes. And we say, okay, these are the only people that we're willing to give envelopes to based on the criteria that we've put in place, which again is tied to our smart group. All right, we've got that. We've got current envelope number and then new envelope number, which will be the current one until we change it. So the first thing we're going to do is actually clear all this out. When we click clear, it just removes any kind of association with their last envelope. Now keep in mind, we just clicked clear, we didn't hit save, so it hasn't locked anything down yet. Now what we're going to do is go through and mark who should be contributing jointly or not. And if there's anybody who's married that isn't contributing jointly, there should be a good reason for it. It's default to contribute jointly, but like I said before, in some cases individuals will prefer to contribute separately, and that's fine to keep that in mind. And so if you want to keep them separate, you can keep them separate. But otherwise, it's good practice to go through and make sure there's not any that contribute separately. We're going to go ahead and say that the Nelsons choose to contribute separately. They want their own envelopes, and that way we have that box there with a box for each person. All right, now the next thing is to say, is there anybody who shouldn't receive an envelope even though they're eligible for it? Well, what would that scenario be? Well, it may be somebody who wants to give anonymously. So maybe Howard Brown says, I don't want an envelope, I don't want you tracking it. I'm giving from the heart, I don't need anybody to know about it. That we hear that regularly, and that's okay. That's a personal choice. So we'll put don't renumber for Howard Brown. Now, another example may be that, for example, Jason and Rebecca, we'll go back to them. They're a younger couple. We tend to find that those who are younger prefer to give electronically because they don't carry checkbooks. My wife and I still have a checkbook. We're on the younger side, although I don't often feel that anymore now that we have 2 kids. But we do contribute electronically, and so we really don't need envelope numbers or offering envelopes because we don't use that. And so in that scenario, you may say, okay, skip that. Now, this is a little bit outside the scope, but you could create a tag for give electronically if you'd like, and exclude that group and like have a smart group that does that, and then go through and just put don't renumber. That's one way of doing that. That's a little bit outside the scope, like I said, for today in terms of how to create smart groups and tags and all that. But if that's something you'd like to do, if that's something that causes you some additional concern and time to account for during offering or envelope renumbering, I can walk you through that process separately. So you go through here and then you say, okay, who doesn't get it? Well, we'll just add a couple more in here. Donald and Kim don't get envelopes anymore. Nathan and Dawn, they don't. And so you go through. Now that blocks off this new envelope box here. So now we're going to go and renumber everybody and say, all right, we're going to automatically renumber envelopes starting with 101 and renumber, and bam. Now it goes through and it fills all of those in. It skips those that we didn't want to renumber, and so you can start seeing people's envelope numbers will be different from year to year, and it'll continue down there as you see, and logically as you go down it's just going to become more and more different as you have these edge cases in here. So we'll get down here to Jennifer Yang. Actually, that ended up working out almost exactly right, 168 compared to 169. So those are the new envelope numbers for 2018, and we can go ahead and save that. All right, renumber all of these on January 5th, 2018. Save. All right, I'm almost at my time. Like I told you, I tend to go a little bit long. We don't have any questions in the queue, so I'm going to keep going, and we'll probably go past that time. Now, the more envelopes you do, the longer it may take to save because it's updating those records. But you see, that wasn't too long. Just want to make sure you're aware that it will take a second to update our database, and so don't think that it's not working. All right, now we are going to go back to people. We've renumbered our envelopes, we're ready for 2018, at least on the data side. Let's talk about communicating with people. So on people, you can go here, and one of those options, individuals and households are the most common, but then you have givers as well. And so when you click givers, it actually changes this list to be the same view that you have, or the same grouping at least that you have under envelopes, in that it puts joint contributors together and it gives their full legal name so that you can see all that information. Now, you still have this here where you've got current envelope number and next envelope number. And the next envelope number is based on the next change. So you can see we've got next envelope is 2018. Now, the columns, there's not too many column options, so we usually just recommend you leave them all on. But one thing that's very common as you're getting in boxes of offering envelopes, you want to put the name of the person on them so that they can pick them up, or maybe you distribute them yourselves. But you need to print out those labels. So the first thing you would do would be saying that everybody who has an envelope, all right, has offering envelope number. Now remember, the way that we created that smart group was that has an envelope number at all. Now, you could change that and say has an envelope as of, and we're going to go into 2018, January 5th. As of January 5th, has an envelope number. And we'll save this group, and it'll say, do you want to save it to this one or save it to a new group? And you can say 2018 envelopes and save that. So this is everybody that's assigned it. So the people who are giving electronically, the people like Howard Brown who don't want to give it, they're not going to be in this group. And you can sort it by that envelope number rather than by name. And so you get this nice clean list that goes sequentially all the way through. And even if they didn't have an offering envelope this year, like you can see there, there's Sandy Nelson, Sharon Peterson, all of them, it's all in that exact order. So now you can go here to download and say download mailing labels. We call it mailing labels because that's what people commonly think of. But you don't have to print the barcodes, you don't even have to print the address. You can just print the names. And then you can say show envelope numbers as of this date. And we're going to generate a PDF for this, and that'll take a second as it's generating. Let's go ahead and download and view those. And now you can see, let me zoom in, you have these labels that have the name of the contributor, joint or separate, as well as the envelope number. And you can print this out and put it on the box and put them out for distribution. Now you may be saying, Peter, that's really small. We have older members, they can't read that. I understand. This is just our default view. If you go to download mailing labels and do everything the exact same but generate a Word document, now that'll take a second. You'll download it and we'll open it up. And it takes a second sometimes just to get everything up and running. All right, now you have this exact same view but in Word. And you can say, all right, I'm going to select all, and I really need a size 18 font. And oops, let me actually click on it, not just hover over it. There we go. And now you can print these off to your labels as well. Now you'll have to be careful because if you go too large, like 72 size font, you're going to mess up your alignment with your labels. But this just gives you that option to change it. And maybe you say, hey, I want this to be a sans serif, not a serif font. You can do all of that there just by exporting it that way. And then you can put those labels on the boxes and distribute through the means that you normally do at your congregation. So we're not going to save that. All right, we are just about out of time. I don't have any questions in the queue right now, so I'm going to show one last thing before we go. So this is really outside the scope of envelopes, but one thing that you commonly do at this time is print out contribution statements. And you can use these same strategies by developing a smart group, and maybe in this case your smart group is not those who have had an envelope, it's those who have contributed in the past year. But you can do all of this from the giver's view and then go and say download contribution statements. And you can put that time range and say this year, if you want to go to the end of the year. Nobody's given in December yet, or the rest of this year, the 3 quarters that still remain to be had. But you can do that. You can put in your federal ID, show pledges if you go that route, generate PDFs, and then print it. You can also review and email it and send it to anybody. So that can all be done from this same view. It's done usually at the same time. And as we get closer to the year end, we'll have some trainings related to that. We're going to host this training again in September. We'll probably dig into that in a little bit more detail then. All right, I'm just about out of time. I don't have any questions in the queue, so I'm going to go back to my presentation, just talk about a couple things real quick. If you haven't already subscribed to our product blog, Church360 Members blog, you can do so at the URL listed. And we don't update it probably as often as I'd like, only because we're doing so many things. Sometimes we forget to stop and write it down, but I recommend you do that. As we have more things, we'll be posting it there. If you would like more details and go through actually having something in print Sometimes we hear that it's easier to have something tangible in front of you as opposed to watching a webinar or accessing our help system, which I forgot to highlight. You can access our help system by going to this eye here. And you'll see all these suggested articles. You can search for it there. A lot of great information there. But if you prefer to have that information printed out, we do make that available at a fee of $25 plus shipping. That's really just if that's your preference to have that. That's why we have to charge for it, because we don't include that in the regular cost. Lastly, there's my contact information one last time, and I've also put support up there. They can answer all of these same questions for you, and sometimes they're, I shouldn't say sometimes, they're generally much faster than I am, just because of our roles there. That's what they're dedicated to doing. But I do always enjoy talking with customers, so please go ahead and contact either one of us if you have questions. But we are at our time for today, and I don't have any questions in the queue, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. So thank you again for attending today. I hope you were able to learn some different tips and tricks and some strategy for managing your envelopes, so that when the time comes for you to update them next year or next time around, you're ready to go. So with that, I'll say have a great day. Goodbye.